We are live. What's
Yes.
happening, Lanre?
I'm all good. I'm all good there. It's been a
Yeah.
while. It's been a while.
It's been too long. It's been too long, and a lot has happened. So only right to connect, and obviously connect with everybody else, the Establish You family. Uh, so again, I'm Derek Appau. For those who don't know,
And I'm Lanre Sulola, and we are partnering together on our program Establish You, which is really all around fast tracking your career progression. So our podcast really focuses on what are the key things you need, the qualities, the attributes, the actions you need to take to establish yourself in your business, in your organization, and have the impact that you want. So you can subscribe to our podcast and YouTube and find us on Instagram as well. But yeah, I think it's a good time to really connect because there's a lot happened, impacting the whole world. There's never been a situation where the whole world has been impacted by what's been going on. So yeah, let's just get into it and sort of share not only the impact on ourselves, because there's definitely been an impact, but what does it really mean for people in terms of trying to establish themselves?
That's it. It's different. There's nothing that we've never had anything like this before, right? So I think it's always helpful to reflect on like how far we've come, what's gone on for all of the external factors, and then we can then I guess build and process on it, right? So let's just recap where we're at. So a new decade, 2020 is the year we are in. It was a lot to celebrate, right? A lot to celebrate. Quite quickly, we started to hear about something called, I think at the time, coronavirus or COVID. Eventually, it was COVID-19 happening across the world. And then the first case in the UK was in York. Again, at that point, I think people weren't as concerned. You know, looking at the news events in China especially started to make us think, is this something we should be worried about? Then there was more news about how it was spreading across the whole globe. We started to panic a bit. I don't know about you, but I definitely went out and did some extra shopping that maybe wasn't that helpful. But at the time I was thinking, if I'm going to be locked down, I want to make sure I've got some good supplies.
Yeah, I was cool. I wasn't buying into the panic, but there were definitely times then when I went shopping, there was nothing on the shelves.
Yes.
So,
I think that's what made me nervous. That's what made me, exactly, because I was thinking no beans, no pasta. It was tricky, and yeah, at that point it started to feel really strange as to what might be happening for us in the near future. Then, you know, if you were still getting about, obviously this is quite London centric. If you're not based in London, you know, there's a picture of the underground and people wearing face masks. Just carrying on with their own, getting on with their own thing. And when anybody would sneeze, everyone would really react. So that was happening. And then March 23rd, that's when the official announcement about you must stay at home from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Lockdown. Official.
Yeah, and that's when you're like, yeah, life is different. That was actually my wife's birthday, and I planned some stuff. So she's still asking for her birthday sort of back at some point. But yeah, you just realize that, you know what, we can't do what we normally did, and just the simple things you take for granted. Work by then, everything face to face, cancelled or turned into online.
Yeah.
And it was, very, very, very interesting. Yeah, we'll talk more about it, but it just shows, even when we look back, it seems like this was ages ago.
It does. Yes. Couple months ago. Surreal, quite surreal. So then businesses had to close based on the government's announcement. And that was businesses in all shapes and forms, from your airlines to your Starbucks. And people had to make some very difficult decisions as to whether they could continue, if they did have opportunities to work remotely, who would be able to do that. The country looked very different. If you are watching this and you're not listening to it, we were just showing a picture of you know how London looked. I think there's Liverpool Street there, or was it Waterloo? Yeah, things just looked very, very different to what they used to be like. Then schools being closed, nurseries being closed. That was tricky. Having a child and working from home for many has been very, very challenging. Any comments on that, Lanre?
I think that for me has been one of the biggest kind of things, having to deal with young children at home, still trying to work, keep things
Mm-hmm.
going. And at first, to be honest, I thought, you know what, can make this work.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just wake up a little bit earlier, change things around, get some
Yeah.
shifts going. And actually, this is going to be a great opportunity to have more time with the kids, have
Mm.
fun, get them learning. I was going to show that I can do it all.
Oh yeah.
And it very quickly became clear that this is not an easy job to
No.
kind of engage and educate your children at home,
Mm-hmm.
as well as trying to work. And in fact, it's impossible. So
Yep.
I think that caused me a lot of stress, trying to get everything in order. Then there's other emotions of actually I'm not doing enough for them. We're not doing it enough.
Yep.
My wife is also
There's a level
working as
of
well.
guilt as well. There was a level
Yeah.
of guilt that would creep in terms of if you were um, being too productive or trying to be productive and work, and then maybe not spending as much time with the children as you could be doing,
Mm.
and then the respect for teachers and nursery the key
Yeah.
workers went up. Wow, the patience levels. But yeah, I'm sure we'll cover that, and I'm sure many of you listening, if you have experienced that, can share some comments. The organizations, again, the tricky conversations about how do we sustain ourselves as an organization. How do we cut costs? What is the continuity strategy? For many, it's led to redundancies or furloughing. So people who've been put on furlough. So that on its own has been quite tough for leaders to make those decisions. What have you seen, I guess, working with organizations or leaders on this particular?
Yeah, similar. It's like I've worked with organisations who having to furlough people or putting people on sort of half their time, and there's been a lot of uncertainty, a lot of just feeling of actually not sure what they're going to do. Businesses not totally having the answer themselves. So
Mm.
it's just that whole feeling of change and people just not knowing who to go to. But I think also people have become, the sessions I've run, the organisations I've worked with, that need to be vulnerable and not take this on their own, and actually
Mm-hmm.
realization that look, we're all struggling here. And I've seen teams using sort of connections and ensuring that actually they're a part of a group, to help them get through this time. But
Mm-hmm.
again, we'll discuss and touch on this.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's been challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in that one. So again, yeah, the strain that was faced by organizations and individuals, freelancers. There's a whole debate in terms of self-employed versus limited companies and what support was available. But listen, the government did step in and pledge 330 billion, which is just unheard of in order to support the economy in terms of loans and grants. So that happened, which was also kind of a nod to how serious the situation was. When I saw that, I remember watching it thinking, wow, there's a lot of money.
Yeah, and it just I've seen the document actually, recently, of how much companies have kind of taken from this scheme. Big
Mm,
organisation with large resources, large people. It's an astronomical amount, and the
mm,
impact this is going to have for the economy, for people, for businesses, we won't realise till years
mm-hmm,
and years,
mm-hmm.
decades maybe, down the line. So it's, yeah, as we said, something like this has just not happened.
No.
Um, yeah. And it's across industry. There's no one industry that can say, you know what, we're
Mm-hmm.
fine. Cross industry, whether it's travel that's been hit, whether it's retail, hospitality,
Across the board,
sporting
exactly.
industry, whatever it is, um, it's been hit. So it's a very interesting time.
Definitely, definitely. Uh, One thing that came up for me is speaking to, I've continued to, as yourself, coach and train so individuals and teams remotely. So I've got quite a broad perspective of how this whole remote working is affecting people differently. So if you have children, so in the top left, top right for me is a picture of, I guess, the Professor Kelly. So there was a moment when he was on the BBC live, and then he was kind of being streamed, and then the children came in, and his wife kind of quickly tried to rush them out. A lot of people have had that experience now, where they're working on a conference call and their child and maybe even their pets have kind of interfered. So that's been many people's realities. Some people are really fed up with it and struggling to do the whole remote working thing productively. And then you got some others who actually they were on furlough. So this time has been amazing for them to self-reflect, to get themselves in shape, maybe do some personal development and online courses, etc. So really, really different realities for people is what I've noticed.
Yeah, and a lot of people adjusting to this for the first time, and yeah, I think people are getting used to it, but then there's also been instances of people being zoomed out, for example, and actually, you know what, this is just too much, and just logging on a computer.
Yep.
And I guess there is also the risk of, it's a virtual trap, if you like, of when you are kind of virtual and work on your computer, that your only focus is work. You don't have those water cooler moments that you have normally in the office, and it's about really making sure that, you know what, I'm still a social person that needs to connect and needs to let people know how things are going on, and just checking in on the weekend, even though every day seems the same because we're not afforded the same freedoms, but it's still about ensuring that we do have those interactions and connections that help. So again, it's just been a real change to how we work and how we do things.
Yeah, definitely. And different personality types have responded differently as well, in terms of some people actually like to be working solo and not having too many water cooler moments, or the regular check-ins, or someone just across the way just having a chat with you or overhearing conversation. Some people really like that, whereas others have craved the connection to find out what's happening, or just be engaged with other people. So it's, again, really, really different experience for many people. The sad point of this all is that we have had several cases and some numbers in front of us, zoning in on the amount of deaths. So, we've gone past the 41,000 COVID-19 associated deaths in the UK, which is a ridiculous number. So, for many, it is very close to home, losing loved ones, probably not being able to say goodbye in the way that you would have liked, or having very close encounters where people were being really, really sick, and then hopefully kind of recovered or in the recovering stages. So all of that has an effect on yourself, and then obviously the work that you do, and then on your colleagues and everybody else that you're connected with. It's a significant impact on everybody.
It's what we need to also bear in mind as well, that beyond everything, kind of health is the optimum thing, and it really should and will guide how we continue to live as well. So it's about understanding that the climate we're in, what's going on, what's happening, and how this not only impacts physical health, but also our mental health as well. And a lot of, and I'm sure we'll get into this, the real support that's going to be needed, not just now, but going forward.
Yeah.
Really support people in what is, let's not forget, a difficult and challenging time.
Yeah, massively. Deep condolences to anybody who's lost loved ones or friends in this chapter. Okay. This headline, again, those who are listening, there was an article written quite recently about, and the headline says, minorities more at risk from COVID-19 because of racism. This was report that was done, um, and requested quite passionately, with I guess extreme importance, to look at why people from Black, Asian, and ethnic minorities seemed to be dying from COVID-19 at a higher rate than other ethnic groups. So I think, unless you want to dive into this, there's so much we could speak on this particular part. I think it makes sense for us maybe to break it up and do another chat on this specifically.
Yeah, and again, it just points to the whole story that there's lots of different things we need to be aware of and think about, and it's not just going to be one simple solution right now. So we've all really got to work hard.
Yeah, there's a lot
to kind of come up with the answers and make a positive change and progression.
Yes, definitely. And across the pond, we have, I don't know where to start with this one, in terms of the horrible act that many of us witnessed from the video recording that was done to George Floyd in America. Do you want to build on that?
Yeah, again, it's a situation that has really transformed the way we're thinking, the way we really need to sort of look how we work going forward. And yeah, I know we'll touch on this and talk to this specifically a little later, but the emotion of it is really real, and people are feeling it. And when we get into it, it's important for people to understand what this means, and therefore what are some of the things we need to do to make that change, and for this to not repeat itself.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's brought up a lot of conversations, but some quite harsh facts and truths about the world that we live in. So one of the takeaways from what's happened in America is that it's put the spotlight on other countries, and the question is, oh well, that's in America. Obviously, we don't even have guns here, and let's take away from the police brutality part, the injustice, the racial injustice happens, and that is what a lot of the discourse has been about over the last few weeks. It's like, no, does it really? How though? And then individuals are coming out to share their stories, etc. And like you touched on, I think we should just spend a bit more time on this. So let's do another video separately for this topic, because there's a lot we can get into. And the protests that are happening all over the world, and the conversation continues. Whoa, that's a lot. There's a lot in it.
I don't know how long we've been speaking for, and I think at each different part, there are things that we need to draw on, and we will draw on. I think it's just nice to give that context, which in the space of 3 months,
yes,
these really, really big things have happened, and it's had an impact on many people in different ways, and there's going to be a sort of impact as a result of that. So even just going through some of that, part of it we're not even thinking about it anymore, but you're like, actually, that only just happened. We're still trying to work through that. So I've got a lot, and I think we've both got a lot to kind of unpack. So how we do that, I'm not sure. Maybe we just jump and dive into it. Maybe it's about looking at the COVID and then the Black Lives Matter kind of separate, and we can have two videos for that.
Yeah.
But it's good just for, I think, to just be reminded that, yeah, this is not a normal place that we're in at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to put you on the spot, actually, and ask you, kind of, from the COVID-19, the quarantine phase, lockdown, working from home, in a few words, or how can you describe that? How it's been for you?
It's been a challenge, I think, for me. It's made me reflect on kind of what's important to me,
Mm,
my motives, my reason for actually being. And you see the good, the bad, the ugly. Obviously, I want to do the best to sort of protect
mm,
my family, my inner family, extended family. But then there's also that element of I just want to live my life and do my own thing. I want to be able to work. I want to be able to go out. And there's always that thought of actually, oh, this thing's not real. It's not impacting me at the moment. And there's
mm,
this real conflict and challenge and
mm,
frustration. As touched on with the kids, like you want them to do well and grow and learn, but
mm.
sometimes you just want them to leave you alone. And it's not going to happen at age mine are 5 and 2.
Yeah.
Uh, and you realize the patience you need, the care, and you see the impact on them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they had a routine. They're not seeing their teachers, their friends.
Yeah.
They're not getting the same level of engagement and social activity and exercise, all of these things that schools
Mm.
provide. They're now stuck in the same house. We've got a garden, lucky to have a garden and go
Yep.
outside every now and again, but it's not the same, and they're probably getting told off more than they're normally used to just because they're in the house. So
Mm-hmm.
it's that's been a real challenge. The work side, the different elements of work, seeing work sort of dwindle for a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
seeing cancellation, seeing people not responding to your messages because you know lots going on, and there's questions of actually what is going to happen to my business,
Mm-hmm.
to work? Is this going to be a short-term thing, a long-term thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at all the furlough, didn't do anything like that. But you
Mm.
start thinking, actually, should I try and get some government help and whatnot?
Yeah.
But you start
Yeah.
thinking all of these things because you're like, what's gonna happen? And
Mm-hmm.
it takes time to kind of really reflect and process. Okay,
Mm.
this is a situation. Actually, what can I do? What's important here? But I think we all have to accept that actually no one's immune to some of this. And it just shows you can have the greatest plans in the
Yep.
world that things can throw you off. So it's been a bit of a learning curve. I think
Massively.
come to a better place. Kids have gone back and having that time again and conversations are starting to come up.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to remind myself, even if conversation hadn't come up in the past month, then what? So it's kind of you can't just let yourself be kind of guided based on actually what's happening in the here and now because
Mm.
it get worse. Who knows? But it's been really, really kind of difficult. What about for you?
I'll be honest. There was one thing that as you were speaking, I was reflecting because it's been like ups and downs, and at the early stages of lockdown, when I think a lot of people were furloughed, the the key theme or feeling I had was overwhelm. So there were like loads of messages. Hey, this is what you should be doing with your children who aren't in nursery. Here's some amazing games you could be doing. Here's resources and everything. I've already meant well, but it was just like being peppered by loads of different media channels and WhatsApp groups and then on top of that there was the constant news media about the numbers, the death toll, or the cases, and it was just constant, and it was like I had to just kind of make a conscious decision to say, actually, you know what? Let me take control over this. I can control some stuff in terms of what I'm responding to, what I'm feeding myself, because it just felt like panic more and more. There was a lot that wasn't really helpful. So I just made a decision that I needed to be less accessible to
Mm,
stuff, and that was part of my like coping strategy.
mm,
Essentially, actually, now I'll say it out loud. That was part of my coping strategy, and then to make sure that I exercised. Trying to set a bit of a timetable for the little one in terms of what he could be doing. There's some fun interactions there, but at the same time, all those plans can just go out of the window in one instance.
mm,
So yeah, that was like the initial part of it, and then similar to you, just the cancellations, and then starting to understand or consider what might happen from a financial perspective, income, and how to maybe pivot if you need to be pivoting, or if you need to get help, what the options are. So yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster from that
Mm,
perspective.
mm. Yeah, I hear that about that overwhelm actually as
Yeah.
well. That it just seemed so much, and then you had all the conspiracy stuff going on, and then
Yes.
realizing, should I be doing this? Should
Mm.
I be doing that? Should I be
Hmm.
going here or there? Who should I be listening to?
Yeah.
And as I touched on before, the mental
Yeah.
impact on that as well. So even though I might be feeling physically well, there's just mental drain
Yep.
and strain. And I think that's something that everyone has to be aware of. Businesses have to be aware of, because there's
Hmm.
going to be people um, having the impacts of that. And us, we've got families, and it's the impact. How do you
Hmm.
manage your family? Some people I know, friends, family. It's the impact of being on your own,
Yep.
not being around anyone for such a long period of time,
Mm.
and dealing that causes its own sense of
Yep.
stress and
Yep.
strain. Those on furlough, you're on
Yep.
furlough, you're on your own now. What
Yes.
do you do? I spoke to people about just feeling lack of purpose, or being
Hmm.
just dead bored and not
Yeah.
knowing
Yeah.
what to do. And compounded with that, you might have loved ones who you're maybe shielding or not at their
Hmm.
best. So there's a
Vulnerable.
lot of strain, a lot of vulnerability going on. So I think sharing, having
Hmm.
those conversations
Yeah.
is really important. To say, you know what, I'm actually struggling here.
Mm.
This is not easy. I thought it'd be easy. I thought I could cope, but actually, I'm not coping. There were
Yeah.
days, and I'll be honest, I'll say I wasn't coping. There was days
Mm.
when like, you know what, I'm meant to be doing a day of schooling with them.
Yeah.
Um, watch the TV
Yeah.
today. I'm not in the
Yeah.
mood. The house is a mess.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's like all of these things. I've got this piece of work. Let's be real. I guess we all trying to put up our front of everything's
Hmm.
fine, but I don't know. I think sometimes you've got to be like, there's a lot going on,
You
and
have to be.
it's a struggle. So, and I
We're
can't be very.
humans. Yeah, you are humans, and especially if you are working and doing type of work that we're doing, that you know people are coming to you for that opportunity to vent or to grapple with how they're going to solve their personal challenges, be it the organization or whatever they're going through. So you have to bring a lot of yourself to that conversation sometimes. So it's just about being able to regulate and then protect your own energy.
Yeah, definitely, and it's trying to find that balance, that support, and a lot's been on me because my wife's a key worker, so she's
Okay.
been busy. But then the times when I had work and sessions, she's had to do it, and trying to find
Mm.
that balance between what happens when you both gotta do stuff. Who do you?
Oh.
So it's that's definitely been the biggest challenge, the
Hmm.
impact on home, and still trying to make
Yeah.
work work.
Work. Yep.
Basically, what are some of the things you've really learned about yourself in this period?
Good question. So I like to have control. So the lack of it. So I think one of the things I learned myself is just how much I do like to have an element of control and to be able to plan things. So with that taken away in a significant way, you just have to understand that, okay, do you know what? This is a part of yourself. Sometimes it's quite helpful, but actually sometimes you can just be giving yourself extra stress, and it's okay to just not know, you know. So that's one of the things that I've learned about myself really, and had to just come up with a way to manage that not knowing. Yeah.
How have you managed that? What have you done?
Mindfulness has been a big thing for me. Just when I can and exercise, just I can control that, if that makes sense. So I can have a routine. I can make a decision that, okay, I'm gonna journal. I'm gonna do some meditation. I can at least know for one day that's something I can control.
Mm,
You know, so just focus on what I can control, and the things that are out of my control, then they're out of my control, and just kind of being at peace with that. So that straight away gives me a level of agency to
mm,
move forward, and that yeah, that's something that is a really key thing. And I do the theory of it, in theory, is quite simple, and in practice is a bit more challenging. So, I do work with quite a few people on that type of concept.
Yeah. I guess as we're in that same boat, but I guess there's also people, we're talking about establishing you. There's people trying to establish themselves at the moment, but they're still got the kids at home. They're still trying to, don't know, get everything work. So how do they really kind of deal with this?
Yeah, it's tough, right? And I guess some people are working from home. Some people are also furloughed. So there's some of my clients who don't have children. They've used this as an opportunity. So it's like, right, I'm going to be off for 2 months or so, paid for. I'm restricted in terms of where I can go, but I'm not restricted in terms of what I can consume. So some of them have actively put together almost development plans. They've enrolled on courses that they've wanted to do for a long time. They've bought books from Amazon and just got themselves upskilled in a certain way, as well as also just doing things that they enjoy. Stuff that some people are just feel like they kind of a slave to work, and they just working for that paycheck. So for many, it was such a relief. They loved it. So for those people where that is their reality, they've been able to just make the most of the time and enjoy it. Individuals who are working as well, working from home, it's like what you described. You know what? Some days you're going to feel rubbish, and some days the house is going to be a mess. Sometimes the child's going to be on YouTube way longer than you would have liked to, and you're going to start feeling guilty about it. But you know what? You need to give yourself that that level of kindness. Yeah, what your experience has never been experienced before. It's okay to not know what's going to happen. It's okay to have a few off days, but just being aware of it and just being kind to yourself. Like, okay, you know what? At least you did the washing today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think you're right. That self care is
Mm,
key, and some of the little things to appreciate. Even if it was for me, try to do exercise and whatnot. But even if so, let's just go for a little walk around
that's it.
or let's just sit in the garden or read a book. I was
Yeah.
trying to read some more books in
Mm,
a little bit of time I had, and I've got more time now with the kids being at school, and it's now okay. How do I appreciate those extra hours
yeah.
and just remember, as you say, that actually we don't always have the answers. We can't always control things. But what are the things we can take advantage of, and where are the silver lining? So it's been fascinating. Another thing that's kind of really interesting has been this kind of migration to remote working, virtual working. It's kind of like, I feel funny about it some ways, because like all of a sudden everyone became an online coach.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm doing this already, but now everyone's online. You're like, oh,
yeah.
but it's what's been your take on how people have adjusted and how they can use it?
Similar to yourself. So yeah, I was been doing quite a lot of video coaching, one-to-one teams. The facilitation part has been interesting, because some things maybe you have to be quite creative to make it really land and translate in the same way. But got platforms like Zoom, we can go into breakouts, etc. It works quite well. For some individuals have really, or businesses as well, really struggled to do that pivot into the virtual space. It just doesn't. It's not natural. It's not natural. So it's been very, very difficult for many to adjust. But at the same time, some have adjusted really well. It's just, for me, I am just very, very grateful that the type of work that we're doing is just amplified by technology. And kind of wish I had some shares in Zoom and WebEx and those sorts of things. Because they're really doing well in this time, and it's the future. It is the future.
I think a part of it as well, I think, is getting us to think about not standing still. So no one would have expected this to happen like 6 months ago. We'd think we'd be here. But then I guess I start thinking, all right, in 12 months, where might we be that no one would have thought of? So I guess the same in our business, in our career, rather than just kind of left resting on laurels. And it's kind of, how do we kind of break things up to innovate and invent. And I do think and again, in that context of establishing you, it's kind of having that mindset of expect the unexpected,
Yeah.
um, and sometimes drive
Yeah.
for those new ways of being, because right now it might not be appreciated, but there'll be a time where it might. So
Mm.
Zoom, for example, I was using Zoom a little bit before,
Mm.
but not on a scale now and not on a
Yeah.
scale others.
Yeah.
The people might be saying, for example, well, it's a nice tool, but we don't really need it.
Yes.
But now there's a need for it. So what other things are people just going to be like, oh, that's nice,
Yeah.
but actually down the line, it's going to be fundamental for survival. And if you're not on it, if you're not trained, because I know there are, as you say, a lot of companies have had to make massive change to their infrastructure just to make
Yes.
working from home work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
From
there's some companies
security as well, from a
yeah,
security perspective. Yeah.
exactly. But had you been a company who had already kind of been thinking about it, the adjustment's a lot easier.
Yeah. 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 So, you know, it's about future proofing. It's about moving with the times and, you know, almost having your eye on risks in terms of what might happen. And if it does happen, what can you do to mitigate it and stuff like that. So hopefully that is what's one of the lessons that organizations, leaders take from this, is that you do need to be preparing for the unexpected, you know?
Yeah. Another thing you mentioned, and we mentioned when we were going through some of the slides, was the very real kind of health impact.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, how do we, with that still in mind, because this thing is still...
It's still out there. This is the thing that's a bit...
Yeah, so how do we manage that? How do we establish ourselves? How do we work? How do we get back to where we want to get to?
Yeah.
Yet there's still this pandemic going on. There's still this disease going amongst
Yeah.
us.
So as soon as you said that, there's a few things came in my mind. So I remember one of the videos that we did, again, the Establish You series, please check it out. We've been speaking about a lot of these topics previous to COVID-19, but we spoke about mental health in the workplace, and we spoke about resilience plans. And essentially it's even more relevant right now. So that's what's come up for me when you said it, is like, we need to be having our resilience plans more than ever. So what is the resilience plan? It is, okay, so if I'm feeling rubbish about myself, if my income is going to be taking a hit, if I'm not around people and I'm energized by being around people, what am I going to do to give me that boost, to boost my energy and make my well-being kind of increase? Is it that I exercise? Is it that I do meditation? Is it that I just have a favorite song that I listen to every morning? Do I read a passage of something that uplifts me? We just have to be a bit more conscious about what are those things that are going to take us, because our body, like there's an impact on our brains from a neuroscience perspective, and then obviously physically, and there's a negative impact on our nervous system. So we're in fight, flight, freeze mode, and if we're in that mode for too long, there are quite significant health risks that we could face. So we need to work out ways to shock and trick our systems to know that actually, you know what, you don't have to be so scared. You don't have to be as fearful. You can control some of that. And I feel like with the resilience plan in place, that can help individuals. So obviously I'm speaking to individuals and saying, you need to take control of that. But actually organizations, I know we spoke about this before as well. Organizations have a job to do in terms of making sure that their employees are getting the right support and that they're investing in that support. Managers need a lot of help right now.
Yeah, I think that environment is key. Setting the right environment where people feel safe. So I think there's physical safety. You need to come into your office or when people are going back in and feel, actually, I feel safe. Also psychologically safe as well. So if someone's not feeling well, if someone is worried about something going on, what do you have in place that allows people to say, actually, I need to erase something that's been going on, whether professionally or personally. And I think as organizations, we're going to have to be more aware of that and be able to provide more of that care and that generosity towards how we treat people. Because we've seen is it can't just be about the work, because something can happen and it means the work's not important. The work is obviously important, but if the person who's doing the work is not valued and is not made to feel important and is not important, it's going to impact the actual work. So I think this is a really key thing, and I don't think it's just a case of, all right, restrictions are finished now, let's go back to work and just carry on.
This is the thing. So we're speaking about this. Now we've spoken about our personal experiences, and a little bit of kind of anecdotes of what other people we know are going through. But some people aren't processing stuff. Some people aren't, understanding or speaking on some. Essentially, it's like trauma that many people have witnessed, experienced, and it's just going to sit there. And again, one of the reasons is that some of the managers who are looking after people don't feel that they have the tools to navigate a situation. Like, okay, we'll go into more depth, but like the George Floyd situation that happened in America, what the impact might be on the employees in the UK. Okay, so the recommendation from many sources is check in on your black colleagues. How are they doing? I know for a fact that many, regardless of the race, many managers are not going to feel equipped to have those sensitive conversations. So it's just not going to get done. You're just going to not have that conversation. Yeah. So I'll ask you the question in terms of what you've seen that work well in terms of making sure that people's well-being is addressed and sensitive conversations are happening about mental health or race or all of that intertwined, because they're not all in isolation.
Yeah, and I think especially if it's virtual compounded, people feel that, because it's virtual, we can't have these conversations. I think part of it is the beliefs around that, and actually this is a tool that can be used, and we can have safe, open, honest conversations, even if we're not in the same room, and people adjusting to that. And as managers, giving permission for people to bring up things that are struggling or difficult, but also being proactive with it, because some people are naturally quiet. They'll just hold it in and not wanting to share. I work with students, work with organisation. One of the things they talk about was asking, how are you? More than once. Because obviously when we ask the first time, how are you doing, Derek? You want, yeah, I'm fine. And that's all we want to hear. You ask the second time, no, how are you, Derek? Then you might give us a little bit more. But actually, there's this thing weighing on my mind and I don't know how to deal with it. Third time, Derek, I'm asking you, how are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. This thing that I'm watching, the George Floyd incident, I've not been able to concentrate for weeks. I don't think the company's done enough. I'm not sure if the company cares or realizes the impact. Then we can start to have a real conversation, because I've taken that time to really ask, not surface level. So we need a lot more of that. And as I said, it can be harder to do that virtually, because we think, all right, we're now on the call. Let's get through milestones 1, 2, and 3, and we forget about the person we're dealing with. So it's about sort of stripping some of that back. And again, to my point, saying if we want to function properly, we have to be functioning properly, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, all the things that make us kind of a whole person. If one of it's kind of just dying or dead, you talk to someone with, so it's all blazed over. They're not really connected, and they might just get the work done. They might not, but at some point, it's going to combust. And I think that's a risk. Is there going to be a point down the line where some people will just combust in because it's all got too much and it's been held in? So that dialogue is really key, listening, but then having that real action plan. Okay, what are we going to do together? We need to collaborate and partner within the business, but also find the right people externally who can support in that area where you need your help.
No, 100% agree with what you just said there. How about individuals or professionals, leaders, or people, managers who are like, okay, Lanre, that's all good, from an individual perspective, that having those conversations and asking how people are doing, but I've got to do this at scale. Lanre, I've got an organization of, hundreds of employees, all different personality types, ages, races, and I need to make sure that they are, fully functioning, and essentially we need them to be performing and be productive, whether they're at home or whether they're back in the office. I just need them to perform. So what are you saying? Are you saying just I need to just have better conversations one-on-one? Is that going to do it? Because we're already behind on our targets, Lanre, right? What do you say to that type of comment?
Your greatest resources are going to be your people. So you need the structure in place to support your people. So some of that you can do on yourself, by yourself, in your internal structure, by yourself as a manager. But there needs to be extra support around that, whether that's higher up, whether that's peer-to-peer. Are there frameworks in place that's going to allow peer-to-peer support, help, higher up, different units? What resources do you have online that you can refer people to? Courses, programs, coaching, all of these things. Actually, organizations are going to have to dedicate budget. And one of the frustrating things sometimes is when things like this happen, it's the training budgets that get cut. People support. Well, actually, these are the things that need to stay because you need to support your people. And whatever you can't do internally, let me rephrase that, not whatever you can't do, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So do as much as you can internally, but actually there's going to be support externally that you might not be able to do or might not have thought about, or actually linked together can really help support. So find out in that area, if it is around mental health, what are the good organizations that really can help add that scale, add that volume, add that support, whether it's around good conversations, action points, coaching, space, time, and get that support. But obviously that takes budget, that takes time, but you need to do that. And it could be a clear plan. You speak to external organizations, say, look, this is what we need for the next 12 months. How can you support the 12 months? It's what we need 5 years. But allow people to provide that headspace because they're professionals in that area for a reason. You're a professional in selling, I don't know, if it's finance, selling your financial instruments. You might not necessarily, you might have some professionals within internally, but on their own, they might not be able to do it all. So it's going to take a little bit of a shift in terms of what's important. It's a long-term thing as well. It's not going to happen overnight. But the companies that do that are going to be the ones that are going to benefit from it down the line.
Agreed. Nicely put. So I guess, good catching back up with you. It's been a while. And hopefully people listening from the Establish You podcast will benefit from that. We will do another one. I think we need to just, there's a lot of stuff to unpick. So let's arrange some time to unpick and process some of the other points, especially around the Black Lives Matter, race in the workplace, etc. So let's do that. And for now, I'm Derek Appau, Lanre Sulola. My email address, derek@lpexcellence.com. If you do need support to have some of these tricky conversations, coaching, training to support the talent as they kind of come back to the workplace or still work remotely, I can help with that. And Lanre, do you want to share some of your details?
Yeah, Lanre.Sulola at innerambitions.com. Find me on LinkedIn as well. And as we said, we're happy to have these conversations and see how we can support, find out what's going on in your organization, because it won't necessarily be a quick fix. But I think the best you can do is to find out where you can get that support and help and make the progress on what's going to be a long journey, a challenging journey. But there are people who are passionate about this and do care and have the expertise. And so do connect with us, and looking forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Lanre, stay safe. Everybody else as well. Likewise. And we'll speak soon. Take care.